monticellopost.com. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bill. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Okay.
You did good.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Huh?
Next card's pen over here.
Yeah, I don't know either.
You spoke about school safety, right?
I did.
Earlier?
I did.
Do you think it makes kids
both have it.
more or less safe? I know it's kind of hodgepodge of technology.
Are you
going on.
recording right now?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I like to talk to the people who are going to be making laws.
Don't let him record you. He's not here representing the news media.
I'm an individual in Johnson
But
County.
you can't record people.
Says who?
Well, wait, did you ask?
It's a public forum.
I
She
know,
was
but did you
talking to
ask
me.
her though if you could record her?
It's a no, I did not.
Okay.
And are you in charge of this room or this forum or
but
anything?
you need to explain to people. They think you're there as part of the news media, and I don't think that's very kind to do that. So
I don't think it's your business, honestly. I don't want to be rude to you.
You got to hear everybody's answers as everyone else did, but identify yourself if you walk up to people. Please, thank you. Tell them.
Have you told me your name? Wow.
Baseball game, but I am reachable, so certainly reach out to me and we can talk.
Okay. Thank you. Did Bill already leave too?
Joyful they are.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
You spoke very well up there.
Well, at some point I do need to go, yes. Okay.
You spoke very well up there.
Thank you.
You spoke about school safety, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think it makes kids more safe knowing that there's none of the teachers are armed, they can't defend themselves or kids, even if they want to, even if they're
Sorry,
trained?
he needs to go. Yeah, Bill. Owen's daughter is going in on the way out. He did farm. I laughed. I said,
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Bill, if it's your choice, you don't want to talk to me, I won't talk to you. People were walking in front of us and it's not very nice of them.
I think I choose not to this evening. I think I'm at the end of a long day.
All right. Well, enjoy your evening. I like to talk a lot and then sometimes not.
Okay.
What's my job? I'm just recording public meetings, candidates, and sharing with my neighbors.
Okay.
Getting yelled at by some of them, I guess. They're jumping in front of me and not very nice. Thank you. Some people like to try to control the conversation, I guess.
Okay, I think we are ready to go. Well, good evening and welcome to this candidate forum hosted by the Johnson County Post, featuring candidates vying for 2 Kansas. In Shawnee, All three of the forms we do tonight are being live streamed, and the separate videos of those forms will be put on the Post Facebook page where voters can view them at any point between now and November 5th. We want to thank the Johnson County Library for allowing the use of this space tonight. I will also say this is 7 o'clock. The library closes at 8. So we're going to hear a warning at 7:45 and 7:55, and 8 o'clock, we make it to 8 o'clock. So it's a short little announcement, pre-recorded. It will interrupt whoever's talking. We'll allow you to stop, and we'll pick back up your time after that. Just warning you now. I also want to thank those of you still in attendance here tonight, turning out on a Thursday night to watch this, and those of you watching online as well. I also want to thank our subscribers. It's your support that allows us to put on events like this and cover local elections every year like no other local outlet does. Well, with that being said, let's dive right in. And so let's start with opening statements. The format has been explained to the candidates. If you've been here earlier, you also know how we do things. So let's give them a chance to introduce themselves first. And so we'll go right down the line. That's how it shook out. And so we'll start in Senate District 9 with incumbent Senator Beverly Gossage. Allow her a chance to introduce herself and get each 1 minute. So Ms. Gossage, if you want to start.
Thank you. I'll just tell you, for those of you that don't know, Senate District 9 boundaries include a large swath of Olathe, DeSoto, Baldwin City, Eudora, Tonganoxie, Linwood, Bonner Springs, and Edwardsville. That's 8 school districts. So doing a lot of walking. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother. My children all attended DeSoto schools, all 4 of them. I was a former classroom teacher. That's all I ever wanted to be, was a teacher since I was 4 years old, and made my little brothers and sisters sit down and color when I told them to do it. I'm the Sylvan Learning Center's district manager formerly, and for the last 20 years I've been health insurance agent, helping people with their Medicare and individual policies and also employer plans. My family owns Castle Plumbing in Lawrence, Kansas, that my mom and dad started 52 years ago. I chair multiple committees, including the Senate Public Health, Foster Care, Child Welfare, Homelessness, Suicide, Senior Centers, and Mental Health. And I also serve on the Education Committee, Insurance Committee, and Judiciary.
We'll stay in Senate District 9 and now to go to Norman Mallicoat. Give you a chance, Mr. Mallicoat, to introduce yourself and your opening statement.
Yes, my name is Norman Mallicoat, and I am a retired telecom engineer. I've worked for Sprint.
And maybe scoot a little bit closer to the microphone.
Okay, Sprint.
There we go.
Nokia, Alcatel-Lucent, Carafi National. We used to be a software developer and then became, a manager, therefore, losing most technical ability. I've retired now. I've been walking a lot. She's right about this district. You are on your feet all the time, canvassing this district. So I've been living here since 1988 in Olathe. I have 3 children, one in Chicago, one in South Carolina, and one is a dentist in Eudora, Kansas. So my wife is a nurse practitioner and also a nurse midwife. And so anyway, we've made our home here, and anyway, we would like to continue to make it better.
Well, thank you. As you both alluded to, Senate District 9 covers portions of 4 counties, not just Johnson County, but Douglas, Leavenworth, and Wyandotte as well, so we appreciate you both being here. Senate District 10, let's go to that race now, and we'll start with Andrew Mall.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Mall. I am a father of 2 amazing boys, ages 12 and 4. A husband of over 21 years to an incredible woman who I actually met on a blind date 26 years ago tonight, and who happens to also be my business partner. I am a small business owner and have been a small business owner and operator for more than 20 years, a passion that I sort of developed at an early age growing up in and around the district that I am running for. I went to Shawnee Mission West High School, got my first job at the age of 12, working hard for an animal clinic, walking dogs and cleaning cages to help support my mom and myself, and went on to put myself through college at Kansas State University to earn a 4-year business degree. And ultimately moved back here with my future wife to call this place home, a place that I called home for many, many years. Thank you for the opportunity tonight.
Staying in the Senate District 10 race, and we'll go now to the end of the table, and Senator Mike Thompson, we'll give a chance for you to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the Post for having us in here and everybody for being here tonight. I am Mike Thompson. I have been the sitting senator in District 10 now for 5 years. I chair the Federal and State Affairs Committee. I sit on 6 committees total. The cleaning crews at the State House will affirm that I'm one of the first senators in the morning, one of the last out at night. I've worked hard for many, many years. I was in the Navy. I was on broadcast for 40 years. My beautiful wife of 48 years is sitting in the back there, and we raised our 3 kids here. We have 9 grandkids and 3 great-grandkids. And I am serving, I could have retired after my long career in broadcasting, but I'm serving because I truly believe that the solution is not with the federal government, but with the state government. I've been an independent voice in the Senate. I've shown that I can bring groups together to work together to get good solutions. But at the same time, I look at the merits of every bill. I vote on them based on the metrics and whether or not the bill will be good for Kansas, and I want to continue to serve you to the best of my ability.
Thank you to the gentleman in the District 10 race. Of course, the Senate District 10, if you don't know, it covers pretty much most of Shawnee, parts of Lenexa, Olathe, Lake Quivira, and Bonner Springs as well. Well, let's go to the first question. The order falls to Norman Mallicoat in the Senate District 10 race. You'll all get the same question. I've been starting all the State House forums with this question. Kind of gives you a chance to maybe expound a little bit on your opening statements and tell the voters what your priorities are, as well as what you think the priorities are of your district. So what do you see as the biggest priority or need for the residents in District 9? Norman. 90 seconds, by the way, just to make clear, 90 seconds for all of you to answer this.
I think
Just scoot a little bit closer to the microphone, just to...
Well, I'm running based on the vision of that Kansas needs change, and that Kansas is really not about boomer representatives like myself. It's really more about the Gen Z, the Gen X's, the younger, the millennials, and basically they what they want Kansas to be. One of the things Kansas is actually depopulating. Kansas really, needs to attract, talented young people, to, boost, the economy in Kansas, and I don't think we're doing a very good job of it, actually. And so I think, when I spoke to the Olathe Chamber of Commerce just recently, that's what I was really emphasizing, that we need to really, speak to how do we get our own kids back, that don't want to come back from Chicago, don't want to come back from South Carolina, don't want to come back from San Francisco, that we're all educated here, all very smart, all have skills. How do we do that? Well, one of the things I am thrown in my face all the time is like, well, we don't like Kansas, by the way of the culture wars. And so I know in the previous, discussions, it was touched upon somewhat, but actually the younger generations really have no use for this at all. So that's one thing I think is that we need to end this. And we need to get about, encouraging, what it takes to get our children back. Yes.
Going to District 10, Andrew Mall, the question to you, what do you see as the biggest priorities, needs from residents in District 10?
Well, since knocking doors this entire summer, knocking over 4,000 doors now, my campaign team has heard lots from voters in Senate District 10. Senate 10, as I mentioned, I grew up there, and I know my neighbors. They want to help their fellow Kansans. They want their neighbors to live their lives authentically. They want to have common sense solutions to their challenges. And they certainly want their leaders, their elected leaders, to listen to them. And I want to be that voice for Senate District 10. We want strong public schools. I'm a realtor, and I talk with folks every single day about putting down roots in our community. And the number one thing that I hear from everyone is strong public schools. So we need to fully fund them. I think these communities were built on our public schools, and a move towards a voucher system would decimate them. And so I think the number one thing that I hear about are strong public schools. That is what built these communities. I also hear that they don't want the government to interfere with their own private personal decisions. Young folks, as Norm mentioned, are being driven away from our state because of those policies. And people want the government to stay out of their personal businesses and personal private matters. And so I want to be able to strengthen that and make sure that our government stays out of their business and attract those young folks back to our state so that we have a strong workforce and a future for our state.
Staying in District 10, Mike Thompson, the biggest priorities or needs for this district.
Well, I've been walking my district since May, so I'm on my sixth month of walking. I've hit over 16,000 doors. And from everyone I've heard, it's the economy, stupid. You've heard that. Property tax is probably the number one thing people bring up. We are running seniors out of their homes. I ran into a couple the other day who had to downsize to a 1,500 square foot condominium because they were chased out of their previous home. They couldn't pay the tax. They are on a fixed income. They're worried about being kicked out of that home. They weren't sure what they were going to do next. So we have been trying to reduce property tax to SCR 1604, which would cap valuations. The governor vetoed our attempt at increasing the exemptions on the Homestead Act and increasing the income levels so that more people could take advantage of that. So we got to continue to work on that. Also, we need to bring down our tax rates in general. We tried to get a single rate tax at a lower rate. We're not competitive with the surrounding states. We have the highest tax rate. This is why we're losing people. In fact, in Johnson County, we're losing a lot of the high-end earners because they have the wherewithal to move out and get away from this high tax structure and move to another state that's more friendly to them, places like Tennessee or Texas or Florida. So we need to join the cadre of states that have a lower tax rate. I've been in the Senate long enough. I know how we can do it. And with the next 4 years, I'm going to work very hard to do so.
Okay, we'll go back down to the other end. You were quoting James Carville. I don't think you were calling anyone here stupid. So
I was not calling anyone here stupid.
There's no need for a rebuttal.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll go down to the other end of the table. Beverly, Gossage in District 9. The biggest priority or needs you see in this district?
I too have been walking every day, usually 9 to 5, and meeting with people at the doors. You know what I hear most often at the door? Get back. Here, give me your dogs. And they're trying to push their dogs back while they take your literature. But people who are willing to talk to you are wonderful and take time to talk about their biggest concern. And I agree. We hear the economy most often, inflation, how much things are costing, the lack of affordable housing maybe for their children, etc. And of course, property taxes. Many of them don't realize how little the state is involved in property tax, 1.5%, as a matter of fact. I met with a gentleman who is a contractor, and he showed me a home he had just built for someone's mother-in-law and said, I was able to build this house for under $200,000. 2 bedrooms, nice little home. And he goes, the fees, though, kill us when in construction. We have so many government fees, a fee to hook onto the water, a fee to do this, a fee for the 10th inspection, etc. We really need to take a hard look at that so that people can afford to live in this community.
So a couple of you mentioned taxes, a couple of you mentioned education, so we'll jump into those 2 issues first. The orders falls to Andrew Mall in the District 10 race, so let's start with taxes first. Context for this, of course, is that earlier this summer the lawmakers passed and the governor did sign into law a tax cut package that does slash roughly $2.4 billion in property and income taxes, reduces the state income tax brackets from 3 to 2, also eliminates the state tax on Social Security benefits. That's what is now law. Still, we do hear from readers who say that they want more tax relief, they want something else done. If elected or re-elected, are there any other tax cuts, tax relief policies you'd like to see the legislature pursue? What really, in general, is your philosophy on this, and how would you approach it? Andrew Mall, 60 seconds.
So I've heard it at the doors as well, and the folks up here on the panel are correct. The middle class and the working class are feeling the crunch. Cost of everyday essentials is going up. Home costs are out of control. I believe it's more of a supply issue as opposed to a taxation issue, although people are having to pay higher taxes. We have values going up in homes because we have low inventory, and I do believe that our state can do more to help with that, to lower the cost of homes. As far as taxes go, we cannot go back to the Brownback days, and that's what that single rate tax bill would do. And we don't need the experiments of the Brownback days. We cannot go back to those days because that would make it even harder to live in this state. And it would make it even more expensive for the middle class and the working class to put more of their hard-earned dollars in their pocket. And so we do need to focus on a different group of folks, not large corporations and the wealthy. We need to focus on the middle class and the working class when it comes to our tax policies.
Staying at the District 10 race, Mike Thompson, other tax cuts, tax relief policies you'd like to see the legislature pursue next year. In general, what's your philosophy or priorities in this approach?
Well, obviously, lowering tax. What we never factor in the fiscal notes in any of the bills with regard to tax, we always look at how much is it going to cost the government to do this tax, okay? We never look at the economic benefits of allowing people to keep more of their own money. They can't calculate that. The more they do that, the more it expands the economy. The trouble we have right now is the Federal Reserve has had horrible monetary policy for decades. That's driving the inflation, or part of what's driving the inflation. We're going to be at $36 trillion in debt very, very soon. If the state does not recognize that and does not help our citizens deal with that by giving them lower tax rates, we're not going to be able to expand our economy here in the state of Kansas. I also think that there's some very simple things we can change to the regulatory structure that gets the tax burden off the small businesses. Something as simple as how we collect the sales tax. These are our tax collectors for the state, and yet we're penalizing them on day one if they miss a payment. We can change some of that.
Yeah. I will be asking a follow-up question for all of you about kind of regarding spending, budgeting as it relates to taxes. We'll come back to that, but go back to the District 9 race and ask the same question of Beverly Gossage. Would you want to see more tax cuts, tax relief policies that you'd like to see the legislature pursue next year? What would be your philosophy and approach if, in your case, reelected?
I absolutely do. I want to see more people keep more of their hard-earned dollars and less money coming in. State, we need to have less government and more people being able to make their own decisions. And every time we expand government, you have more people who need government assistance. That's not the way we want to go. One of the things that we worked on, of course, anytime there was a tax relief bill that came across, I always voted for it. And even though there were like 7 different major tax bills, we finally came on one that we could all agree upon and the governor was willing to sign. There was a 4% cap on valuation for property tax that came out of the Senate, never quite made its way to the House. But we definitely need to take a look at tax policy, and we don't realize how many times people are taxed. They receive sales tax, property tax, personal property tax, tax here, tax there. Somebody asked me, it's a good thing I don't have to pay tax on food. Again, all we controlled was state tax on food. There will still be local tax on food.
Staying in District 9, Norman Mallicoat, this question to you. Do you see tax cuts, any tax relief policies you'd like to see the legislature pursue next year?
Well, tailing on to what she's saying is that actually just look at your own, property taxes on your home, okay? I mean, really the state's portion is actually, practically the smallest. So, I mean, most of it really is your local, taxing entities. And so the, again, the state, can, they have flexibility in terms of they need money to run a government, obviously. But, they can get it, through sales taxes, they can get it through property taxes, they can get it through income taxes. So, it doesn't always have to be off property taxes. It could be, from some other source.
Jumping off this same topic or continuing along this same theme, we did get some email questions as well as one from the audience, kind of tying this issue of lowering taxes also to spending in state services. We did have several readers by email cite the Brownback era when large tax cuts did lead to diminishing state coffers and accompanying cuts in state spending. Those readers, in their minds, don't want to go back to that era. But how do you balance the competing demands of residents who do still want to see tax relief? You've all said that. You've heard that at doors when you're knocking, but also want to see state services either fully funded or at least not be slashed too much. If you do want more tax cuts, what areas, if any, of the budget do you think could be cut? And we'll start with Mike Thompson, 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. There's a number of different things we can do. First of all, we're sitting on a $4 billion surplus in this state. Second of all, I'd like to find out where Brownback's office is in the State House. He keeps being brought up. If anybody knows the history of that bill, it was Christmas treed up and made virtually untenable. So this conjuring up the ghost of Sam Brownback gets a little bit old. What we can do very easily is start scrutinizing a number of different programs that we have in the state that are not efficient. I sit on the Legislative Post-Audit Committee. There was an audit on the top 5 economic development programs in this state. None of them pay for themselves, and we're talking about over $500 million. So if we just start scrutinizing those and say, hey, these aren't working. If you were in the private industry and you had a program that was not working, that was losing the state money, or losing your business money, you would scrap it immediately. And yet we do it perpetually at the state level. These are places we can find the additional funding to be able to do everything we need to do at the state level without cutting any funding at all. And there's a number of ways we can save.
District 9, Beverly Gossage, the idea of balancing voters' desire for more tax relief, but also the desire to have state services not be slashed too much. If you do want more tax cuts, what areas, if any, of the budget do you think could also be cut?
I'm really glad to have that you asked that question. I'm very pleased that starting next year, what we're going to be doing instead of, example now, I serve on the Education Committee. The education budget is very large, largest budget in the state. But all we see are about 6 pages. It'll say, this is the governor's budget. These are a few things that are in there. So all in favor? And you're just like, wait, can we actually see the budget? Are we allowed to actually see the budget? This next year we will be able to do that. Instead of spending 2 minutes with the budget when you're on a committee, spending more time, more breakdown, more details on what the budget actually is. I'm excited to see that.
And just specific areas that you think might be cut, things that you would target, just to go back to that original question?
Again, there are always multiple things that you feel like, I didn't even know that was in the budget, or why is that in the budget? And for me to start to detail each single one, but usually it's smaller things, and I will call it pork. And where you say, why are we funding this particular museum in this particular town? Well, maybe the legislator wanted to get reelected, and so he went back to his town and said, I'm gonna get this funding. So a lot of that pork needs to stop.
Staying in District 9, Norman Mallicoat, the idea of if you want more tax cuts or want to debate more tax relief, any areas of the budget you think could also be cut?
Well, I have not really heard from constituents, demands for certain specific, cuts to the budget. Now, I'm quite sure that Beverly's correct. There are specific pork items that, that can be cut. But again, for the average citizen, is basically holding back their dogs, and barely talking to you. And so they are not coming up with, oh, you need to cut that. That's not what's happening out there. So I agree, there needs to be a finer, scrutiny, of every single line item, so.
Going back to District 10, Andrew Mall, where you land on this taxing, spending, budgeting question.
Sure, it's a delicate balance, but being a small business owner, I have to deal with this every single day, and I have for roughly 23 years. Being able to balance a budget, put food on the table, make sure that I'm cutting wasteful spending or not getting involved in wasteful spending, and so it's something that I've been trained to do for many, many years. While I don't know the details of what specific projects that or budget items that we would need to cut. I do know that there is wasteful spending, and we just need to be able to identify it. I would focus more on expanding our economic development as opposed to restricting it, because I think that widening our tax base would actually bring more to our coffers and put more revenue into our state. And so my focus would be more on the economic development side of things.
A couple of you mentioned education in your first question about priorities, and so we'll jump from taxes to education, though it's kind of maybe some similar veins and themes here. So this question will start with Beverly Gossage in the District 9 race. We'll say Governor Laura Kelly has boasted of 6 consecutive years of K-12 education in Kansas being fully funded, in her words. A funding bill passed this year also boosts funding for special education. The funding situation appears to be remedied enough that the Kansas Supreme Court is no longer overseeing the funding process. Going into 2025, what do you see as the biggest priorities or any remaining challenges for K-12 school funding, and how would you want to address that if elected? 1 minute.
Let me just say that of the parents that have talked to me at the schools, they're very happy with their schools. We have wonderful teachers in all 8 of the school districts that I serve. However, as far as fully funding the schools, they just hand us a budget. We say, okay, the money goes there. But I can tell you as a classroom teacher, it just never really filtered down to us. And you're like, okay, I got this tiny raise for next year, but now I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to buy these things for my classroom. And I think more of that money needs to get down to the teachers. I would love to see that, but that's not up to the state, just so that you know. It's not something that we do. I'm glad we're going to be reviewing that budget, however. I do think that parents need choices. As a mother, my 3 older children were in the gifted program. I was the parent liaison for special education, but my youngest son was severely dyslexic. Couldn't read at all going into 4th grade. So I left my teaching position to homeschool my son. That was my choice, but not every parent can do that. And I think we definitely need to look at some options for parents.
And we'll ask a follow-up question about that later, but we'll go to Norman Mallicoat now, still in District 9. What priorities, remaining challenges do you see for K-12 education, K-12 education funding next year going into 2025?
Well, I am very much a believer in special education, and I have a personal story myself. My oldest son, basically now I think it was 2nd grade he started to read, but at first, I mean, it was like I don't know, we weren't sure what language this kid understood, and but nonetheless, but again, through additional special attention and education, and parental involvement, I used to sit with that kid, every night, the kid graduated from Kansas State with a degree in mechanical nuclear engineering and has a master's degree in nuclear engineering. He hates to read, but he can do math. So there you go. I mean, so I think it's one of those things. It's this between parent and school partnership. We can get these kids where they need to be.
Going to District 10, Andrew Mall, the biggest challenge, priorities remaining for K-12 school funding, and how would you address that if elected?
Well, as a proud graduate of public schools and a parent, very proud parent of public school students, I think it's very important that we fully fund our schools, including special education. And I know that I'm hearing at the doors that voters understand that there's a shell game going on at the state. And when you say you're fully funding schools but not fully funding special education, I've heard from districts across my district and across the county that say that leaves budget gaps, holes in their budget that then they have to fill by utilizing the general funds that take away from all the students across the district. And so when we're not fully funding both, we're not taking care of our students. Our students deserve better, and we need to take care of them.
Staying in District 10, Mike Thompson, any remaining priorities, challenges for K-12 school funding that you would want to address next year?
Well, we did vote to fully fund special education, and if there's a shell game at all going on, it's at the local level, where they are supposed to use some of the local option budget for special ed, and they have not been doing so. And so we added some funding to that this year to fix that problem, but it's a temporary fix. What we really need to do is scrap the at-risk funding paradigm that we have at the school right now, because what it does is it silos money into certain areas where the school districts are unable to move that money around where it's needed. and therefore it does not make it to the classroom. For example, Shawnee Mission District had a 6% increase in students, but had a 23% increase in spending at the administration level. They spent $500,000 on 6 administrative interns. That's doing nothing to help these students. And so if we don't change the funding paradigm to where the state can hold these districts accountable, which is not the case now, then we can't fix this problem. And we've got to make sure that happens.
A question from the audience asks straight away, are you a supporter of public schools? And I'll also just add another question that we've asked in previous forms. Would you support measures that would allow the use of taxpayer dollars to go to individuals enrolled in private or religious schools? Because I believe that's the subtext of this written question. So why or why not your support for public schools and also allowing taxpayer funds to go to individuals or families who may want to send their kids to private or parochial schools? And we'll start with Norman Mallicoat in District 10.
Well, first, the answer is no, and the reasoning is this. Kansas, is basically not a densely populated state. How would that ever work, in central and western Kansas? Like, oh, I'm going to send my kid to this private school that's 5 counties over. I mean, it's just not feasible. In a county like Johnson County or Sedgwick County, it will basically, weaken the public school systems there. So, no, I'm completely against it.
Going to District 10, Andrew Mall, do you support the use of taxpayer dollars to go to individuals or families enrolled in private or religious schools? Again, maybe the subtext of the question written down, do you support public schools? Andrew Mall, 60 seconds.
Short answer is no, and it's because our communities are built on these schools, and it would decimate the sense of community when you rip the public schools apart. And our students deserve better, and public funds should go to all students in Kansas, not a select few or the chosen ones. It should go to all Kansas students.
Staying in District 10, Mike Thompson, this question to you. Do you support the use of taxpayer dollars to go to individuals who want to go to private or parochial schools?
I believe that there's a lot of frustration with the outcomes at the achievement levels of the public schools, and we need to bring those up. We do have a constitutional duty to fully fund those public schools. We met that constitutional duty as the Supreme Court dropped the Gannon decision. I have some very serious concerns about using those funds, because if you tie government money in any way that it goes to a private school, those private schools who are being used as safe havens for some parents who want to keep their kids out of some of the woke agendas at these public schools. May I have a little more time?
Well, you can continue,
Okay.
of course. Yes.
It gives them a safe haven. And if you attach public funds, eventually the requirements will follow into these private schools. And so you're going to change the public schools, the nature of the public school, or the private schools rather, including homeschools. They have some very serious concerns. So this is a very big issue. I think there's got to be a lot of discussion about it. And I have my concerns.
Going to District 9, Beverly Gossage, is a question to you about taxpayer funds going to families, individuals who want to go to private or parochial schools. Your support or not for that?
There are 2 bills that we passed this past year. One was that came out of the Education Committee. One was for open enrollment to allow students who felt, somebody mentioned in an earlier panel that their child was bullied. And so they were allowed to go to another school, allowing parents to change a school if for whatever reason they feel that their child is not thriving in the school that they are in. So we did pass that. We also passed a bill that allowed a tax credit if somebody wanted, and again, it's capped at $10 million, but if somebody wanted to put into a fund and for children who maybe are going to go to another school or something of that nature, it could be a parochial school, but it is not taking money away from our schools, our public schools, but it does allow parents to pay into this and get a tax deduction, and then they could apply for this use of this fund. I personally, as a public school teacher, strongly support public schools. But again, I think we really need to look at options for parents. I also think we need to include more parents being allowed to come into the school and participate in the school and help with the reading group. I see less of that.
Let's go to the next issue. We'll go to District 10, and I believe the order falls to Andrew Mall. We've gotten a lot of questions via email before this about abortion. We've gotten a couple of questions here in my hand, so let's address this now. And we'll ask each of you a follow-up question kind of based on the response to your first answer. We'll just say the context for this. So 2 years ago, Kansas voters rejected the Value Them Both amendment that would have explicitly stripped the right to abortion from the state constitution. The Kansas legislature has continued to debate measures related to abortion in the 2 years since. Dozens of bills, in fact, seeking in some way to impact abortion procedures, limit them in some ways in some cases. It's widely expected that such measures will continue to come up next year. Andrew Mall, do you support any new restrictions on abortion or laws in any way governing the procedure, or do you think the laws currently on the books are effective and necessary? Why or why not?
Well, I stand with the voters of 2022, well over 60% of my district that voted no on the ban on abortion. And I would not support any more restrictions that seem to come up every single year by the dozens. And whether it be stripping away IVF from families trying to start their families in the state of Kansas, or forcing abortion patients to be grilled over why they're getting abortion. It is a constant barrage attacking women's reproductive rights. I believe, and I think the voters in my district believe, the government should stay out of personal, private matters, period.
A follow-up question to you then, do you think that some of the measures that you mentioned, some of them have become law? I think the supporters of those laws think they don't necessarily infringe on the right to abortion, actually make the process and the women involved safer. What would you respond to that?
Well, it's a very personal thing to have to go through, and I don't know that it makes a woman any safer to have to be grilled about why she's getting an abortion. I don't quite understand how that makes anybody safer. I think taking away IVF or not protecting IVF as a treatment to be able to start a family in this state is a travesty. I have friends that live in the district that have utilized IVF to be able to start their families. And so, I think these restrictive measures that we see every single year by the dozens, as I mentioned, are not wanted in my district.
Staying in District 10, Mike Thompson, do you support any new restrictions, any measures related to abortion governing the procedure? Why or why not?
Well, I think as someone who believes in the sanctity of life, someone who believes that life is worth protecting, I was disappointed in obviously the Value Them Both, but I want to remind everyone that as a senator, I voted with the majority of the legislature to put that to the vote of the people. And so we respect where we're at with that point, with the legal and political issue right now. Just a few weeks ago, the Hodes decision was reaffirmed. So that also basically puts us into a position where what we're doing now is trying to support these young women who are faced with this decision by supporting their ability to have adoptions. We passed an adoption tax credit this last year to lower the threshold for young parents who can't have kids. We also increased the refundable tax credit for the pregnancy resource clinics, which provide health care and counseling to these young women. So we want to support them and give them confidence to choose life, and it's one of these situations where it's not.
A follow-up question to that then. So we had a couple of people mention in their index cards, and I think Andrew Mall might have also alluded to it, especially the law about the surveys asking women questions when they do go in to maybe seek the procedure. Many readers and a couple of people here who send index cards, they do see that as invasive and also just against the spirit of the 2022 vote. So how would you respond to that?
That was voluntary. That we came through Health Committee on that particular bill. We were not mandating that anybody ask or answer those surveys at all. But what we were trying to do is find out the reasons why somebody would want an abortion, to give us the data that we need to see how we can support those young mothers. And again, we weren't forcing anyone to answer those questions. That was part of the bill.
District 9, Beverly Gossage, do you support any new measures related to abortion, any new restrictions or limits possibly? Why or why not?
First of all, I carry any of those bills that would come through the committee because I chair the Public Health Committee and would come through my committee on the Senate side. I can assure you there was no IVF bill ever that came through committee. I never even saw one. As far as the question, yes, it was voluntary, just to find out more about, do we know why women are making this very difficult choice? It's collective. There's no name that's put on it. And the providers of abortion provide questionnaires to the state all the time about various things, and it was just adding that to that questionnaire. One of the things I would say is the bills that have come through that have passed have been these: educating women on a woman's right to know what exactly is going to happen to me, what can I expect. A lot of abortions now are done through the pill, and they have to take 2 separate pills about 4 to 5 days apart. And just asking the doctor or the abortion provider to share information that says this could be reversible between the 2 pills. So if you would like to, here's the phone number that you may like to call. And then finally, making sure that those facilities are sterile facilities. These have been the bills. It's not chipping away at all.
I just, so follow up to that, I think the specific measures that you mentioned, I think have been challenged in court. I know people have, the pill reversal one especially has been decided.
Let me tell you what I've heard from women, and that was people that I know that are pro-life who said, I didn't understand that amendment. I was told, and we had millions of dollars spent on ads that said it would end all abortions. And of course, that's not the case. All it said was that the Supreme Court said they found a right to abortion. Where is this right to abortion? And that's what the amendment was talking about. I know no senators that would say that they would want to eliminate all abortion, especially when it comes to exceptions, pro-life or not.
We'll stay in District 9, and I will say it's almost 7:45, so we might get this announcement right in the middle of this conversation, which is great timing. Norman Mallicoat, the question to you, the state of abortion access in Kansas, any new restrictions or limits? There we are.
The library will be closing in 15 minutes. Please take materials to a self-check for checkout. Computer and copier access will be terminated in 15 minutes. If you need to have a library card made, please go to a questions desk. Thank you for visiting the Johnson County Library.
Believe it or not, I've been at a library where it also comes in Spanish too, so it doesn't have to be here either. So, but okay, Norman Mallicoat, the question to you to round out this topic: the state of abortion access in Kansas to you. Any new restrictions or laws governing the procedure that you would or would not support? Why or why not?
In the end of the day, this is about women's autonomy over their own bodies.
Just a little closer to the microphone.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. At the end of the day, this is about women's autonomy over their own bodies. And again, because it's an autonomous decision, women, view, any additional, legislation or any, additional reporting as invasive. So I would support women and say, no, no more of this.
And again, just the response to you, if that is your position, some of these measures that we've been talking about, that they don't infringe on the right of abortion, they're just meant to govern the procedure more soundly and safely.
Well, is it true? I mean, really, just because somebody says it, is it true?
Okay. We'll go to the next issue, and I believe it's Mike Thompson. We'll start with you. That's the order. We'll go into District 10, and we will start with another question. We got a lot of reader responses about both in the room in previous forums as well as on emails before we went to this, and it's about guns. Many readers concerned about gun violence, rising rates of gun suicides, gun homicides in Kansas. Data shows that those are on the rise. One reader emailed us this question: it's evident we need to do something in Kansas to curb these growing numbers. So is there any piece of gun-related legislation you would support that you think would reduce gun deaths and injuries in Kansas? Why or why not? We'll start with Mike Thompson in District 10.
Well, we attempted to standardize the firearms safety program throughout the schools in Kansas this last year so that kids would have a healthy respect for the guns and know how to use them. We also lowered, or actually eliminated, the cost to receive a conceal and carry permit in the state of Kansas by eliminating all the state fees. And if anyone's in here has taken one of those courses, it's a very good course. It talks about your legal issues, legal rights, how to properly handle a gun, what your responsibilities are. So I think education is the key. With regard to the gun violence, it really is a mental health problem, I think, to a large degree. 94% of the gun violence and the murders happen in gun-free zones. In fact, there was some new data I heard just recently that there's over 10,000 schools in the United States, and probably they're private schools, that allow the faculty and staff to conceal and carry. There's not been one incidence of gun violence because these shooters may be crazy, but they're not stupid. They look for the place where there aren't any guns so they can increase their carnage without any resistance. So if you don't know someone's concealing and carrying, you're likely not to go in there and shoot the place up.
District 9, Beverly, Gossage, any gun-related legislation that you would support that you think would reduce this reader's concerns about gun deaths and injuries in Kansas? Why or why not?
I agree with what Senator Thompson said. Yes, I voted for those bills that would provide more safety, more education for children as well as for young adults.
Staying in District 9, Norman Mallicoat, your position on this gun-related legislation that you would support that you think would reduce gun deaths and injuries. Why or why not?
Oh, well, I'm for education as well. I mean, I spent 5 years in the Army. I was an Army infantryman, and knowing your weapon, knowing the safety of the weapon, is absolutely essential. Now, in terms of making Kansas safer, there's a free flow of weapons all over this country. We don't control borders here. So I'm not sure, other than educating, our children, adults, I'm not sure we can do much about it, really.
Going to Andrew Mall in District 10, any gun-related legislation you would support that you think would reduce gun deaths and injuries in Kansas per this reader's question?
So I am a parent of 2 young boys, and I think about this every single day. Unfortunately, as a parent, that's what we have to think about. And it's not a fun thought, but there are definitely things we can do. And I am a proud candidate, a Moms Demand Action candidate, and I believe that there are gun sense solutions out there. It's about access, and there's way too much access to firearms. If it is a mental health issue, then we should be fully funding and making sure that we have a budget for mental health out there that seems to also be under attack every year when it comes to budget cuts. I think there is legislation we can put out there. We want all of our kids to be safe. We want our community to be safe, and access to guns is the issue. We can do safe storage laws. We can have strengthen our red flag laws. We can get assault weapons off our streets, and we can do background checks on every gun sale in the state of Kansas.
Let's go to a different topic. We're now at a little past 7:50. We're going to have another announcement at 7:55, just fair warning, but maybe time for a couple of more questions. Let's move to another topic, and this will go to Beverly Gossage first in Senate District 9. Elections in recent years in Kansas, as well as in Johnson County, have gone off without a hitch, according to both state and local election officials. Many of our readers, though, still express I guess you might say bewilderment or maybe even a little bit of anger at continued suggestions that problems with local elections are possibly leading to widespread voter fraud or miscounts, considering what officials have said. Many readers still seem to take candidates' views on what you might call election integrity as a litmus test of sorts. So the question is, do you trust Kansas election systems? If elected, would you seek to put any new rules or limits around voting in Kansas, or do you think Kansas voting should be made even easier? So let's ask the question to you, Beverly Gossage, first.
I'm happy to answer that question. What I urge everybody to do is work the polls and be a poll judge. I've done that. You can see exactly what's happening. You have people from both parties that are there. Thankfully in Kansas, we have the safest elections. We have integrity in our elections. I feel very comfortable when I go to the polls to vote. And I think it's unfortunate if people feel like, well, why should I vote? My vote is not going to matter, or how do I know that it's really going to count? It is going to count, and I appreciate Scott Schwab and what he's done as Secretary of State. And I can't speak to what's happening in other states, but I can certainly tell you in Kansas, I feel very comfortable with our elections.
And a follow-up question I'll ask all of you, just specific policies like drop boxes, mail-in voting, the period after Election Day when mail-in ballots can be mailed in. Do you support or are skeptical of any of those policies?
No, I'm not skeptical of them, but we have to look at them very carefully. Oftentimes, as Senator Thompson said, a bill can be Christmas treed. Like, we all agree on this one thing, but then all of these amendments get added on, and then you end up voting against that bill. But I do think that we have to do something about the fact that, we have people who are voting early, we have people who are voting by mail. Nobody wants to disenfranchise a voter, but we do want to make sure that they are a legal voter. And I think we do that.
Say in District 9, Norman Mallicoat, do you trust Kansas election systems? If elected, would you seek to put any new rules or limits around voting, or do you want to make access easier?
Well, first thing, I do trust the system. The only thing I believe that we should investigate is that basically beginning mail-in voting earlier. It used to be earlier, and so I think that's something that needs to be examined again.
Going to District 10, Andrew Mall, the question to you: do you trust? Let me ask the follow-up question you. I was going to ask all of you. Any specific policy? I mean, you mentioned expanding or extending the time for mail-in voting.
Yeah.
What about photo ID, mail drop boxes, the time after when mail-in ballots can be sent in? Any other policies that you've considered or think about?
Well, okay, mail drop boxes it depends on what we're really talking about here, so that's really kind of an open-ended question. In other states, I think they do not have as many restrictions on mail-in drop boxes. But I'm talking about, for instance, like the Johnson County Elections Office, like if you mail it there, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about just some box that's in a grocery store.
No, but are the secure drop boxes that are around?
Yes,
So that,
yes.
Okay, District 10, there it is. All right.
The library will be closing in 5 minutes. Please take materials to a self-check for checkout. Computer and copier access will be terminated in 5 minutes. Thank you for visiting the Johnson County Library.
I always say I prefer when it interrupts me as opposed to a candidate. In District 10, Andrew Mall, do you trust Kansas election systems? If elected, would you seek to put any new limits or rules around voting, or do you think access should be made easier in some way?
I trust Kansas elections, and I think the Secretary of State has said such. I certainly wouldn't run around the state pushing conspiracy theories on election fraud or spend taxpayer dollars or our legislature's time on debunking or trying to defraud our elections to the detriment of my own party. I think we should expand voting. I think every legal citizen of legal age should be able to vote. And I think we should make it easier. As a matter of fact, I have 2 children. I have multiple small businesses. My wife and I both work. We sometimes travel for work. So we need that flexibility. We need to be able to vote early or go in on a Saturday. We can't always vote on Election Day. And to restrict it to that day is just not with the times.
And rounding out this question in District 10, Mike Thompson, do you trust the Kansas election systems? Would you seek to put any new limits or rules around voting, or do you want to expand access?
As chairman of the Federal and State Affairs Committee and Senate, I deal with the election laws a lot. We have some of the best election laws in the country. I did work with the Secretary of State on a big cleanup bill, House Bill 2086, in which we looked at some of the outdated laws and tried to clean up some of the statutes on that, and that was a huge amount of work. We spent weeks on that. And I also sit on the Legislative Post Audit Committee, and we audited the election process in Kansas. And we have found some inconsistencies in training across the state between some of the bigger counties where they actually have election officials and some of the smaller counties where it's run by the county clerk. So it's a very complex issue. We've had some inconsistencies in handling of the voting machines and things of that nature. And when you have some of this information available to you as an audit, then you do need to scrutinize. And I think there's common sense ways we continue to work on the voting process in Kansas to ensure everybody has confidence. But we do have good laws, we do have good elections here in Kansas, And we're just talking about tweaking around the edges to make it better.
And I'll hop back to Andrew to ask a follow-up question of him, but Mike, do you trust the mail-in ballot system that includes advanced voting by mail, secure drop boxes? Do you see any need for reforms there?
Are you asking?
Yes, yeah. I'll
Oh,
ask you
okay.
that,
I thought
yeah,
so.
yeah.
The only thing I would do would probably make sure all the drop boxes are monitored and secure, and or maybe reduce the numbers, because you can use the advanced voting locations as a drop box. Once you go to those advanced voting locations, you can just drop off your ballot right there. And so something as simple as that, I think, is a good idea.
And Andrew Mall, you said you kind of in favor of expanding access as much as possible. Are there limits to that? Are there legitimate concerns about easing safeguards? Maybe like requiring photo ID? How to square that for me?
Well, we certainly have to have the safeguards that we currently have in place. Our elections are fair and they're accurate, and so I don't know that we need to change the current laws that we have, but we certainly need to make it easier for folks to vote.
And let's do one final question. It's almost 8 o'clock. That alarm is going to go off again in just a couple of minutes, but we can stay after. We're not going to get kicked out. But I don't want to stay too long after because we've been going for close to an hour now. So we do have one question from the audience. It did come in this forum, but I think someone in the previous forum asked something similar. It did kind of serve as a good coda to the end of the forum and allow you a chance to go off on a high note. This person asks, how will you keep in contact with your constituents and meet with them when they go to the State House specifically? And so this one goes to Norman Mallicoat, first in District 9. Constituent relations, contacting constituents, being in contact with the people you represent. How will you do it?
Well, basically through an email newsletter. Now, I'm not sure yet about the interval. Whether would be useful to a voter, say every 2 weeks, maybe a month, something like that. I'm not sure, but that's how I would do it, and I would certainly meet with any voter.
Going to District 10, Andrew Mall, how would you relate with constituents? How would you be in communication with them?
Well, in my career as a realtor, I have to follow up and I have to communicate with my clients and my customers. And so I've been doing that for 24 years. And the one thing that I would definitely...
Pause that for just
The library is now closed. Thank you for visiting the Johnson County Library.
That's it on that one. You can pick
All
it
right.
right now.
The one thing that I would definitely do would have a town hall meeting every single month. I think it's important for us, for elected officials, to be out talking to their constituency. And then when they come to the State House, that's actually one of my favorite days, is to head to the Topeka and go to the Capitol and talk with my elected officials. But unfortunately, they're not always there. And I think you need to be there. I think you need to take those appointments as an elected official. And I think you need to talk to your constituents.
I'm staying to District 10, Mike Thompson, constituent relations, communicating with constituents.
I've already been doing that. In fact, I was thrown right into the fire in 2020 when we had COVID. And I spent probably 80% of my time on trying to help people get their unemployment insurance claims because the Department of Labor was having serious problems. I have a newsletter that goes out during session. It's particularly read statewide, as a matter of fact, and I'm kind of known as the go-to senator for a lot of problems. I get people from out of my district emailing me with issues because their own senator's not answering their email. So I do keep in contact. I have an open door policy at the State House. All you have to do is make an appointment. I'll certainly see you. And I answer my phone, I answer my emails, I try to stay up with everything, and I realize that's part of my job, and I try to do as well as possible.
And rounding it out back in District 9, Beverly, Gossage, constituent communication, staying in contact with the people you represent. How do you do it?
I do send out a newsletter. We don't always have everybody's emails, so when you're trying to send out an email newsletter, so once during session, we also send out a letter that goes to everyone. That's actually twice during session, and then it asks questions like, what are your thoughts on this? And people send that back, and you get feedback that way. I can just tell you, we in the Senate, we have 4 different committees that are standing committees. So my morning starts on some days at 8 o'clock in the morning, but 8:30 to 9:30, 8:30 to 9:30 is the first committee, and then that goes 9:30 to 10:30 for the next committee, and then 10:30 to close to 12 for the next committee. And then that's the first time I go to my office, and my office assistant said, I signed up 5 people to talk to you today, so you grab a power bar and say send the first one in, and you try to talk as many people as you can, because by 1:30 you need to be in your next committee. For me, that's education. By 2:30 you have to be on the Senate floor by the time they call your name for roll call. and that could last till 5 or 5:30. It's very, very difficult to come and see your senators, so I do encourage you to make an appointment.
Well, thank you to the candidates. Also, thank you to the audience members for staying after closing time. Give them a round of applause for their participation in tonight's forum. And don't want to stay too long. It's been a long night, so just reminders. The deadline to register to vote is Tuesday, October 15th. Early voting begins on Saturday, October 19th, and then, of course, Election Day itself is Tuesday, November 5th as well. Thank you so much to the candidates. Thank you so much to the subscribers and people watching online. And you can find all of our election coverage at johnsoncountypost.com. Thank you.
Billy, thanks. Hey,
You're welcome.
Just disclaimer question. We had some technical challenges again tonight.
Oh no.
Could we maybe possibly?
It should be good. And
Is it okay?
this time I should have a second one because I don't even
Thanks
trust
so much,
myself not to have
Nice meeting you. Thank you.
not to have technical failures. So I'll check when I get home, and I'll probably the easiest way is for me to upload it and you to download it, right?
Just
So
the way you had it before with
Yeah.
on YouTube.
It'll go
if
the
it's
same
okay
way.
to steal with the same credits.
yeah, that's
Is
fine.
that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. You're not stealing.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm putting it in the public. I mean, you don't really even need to
I know,
ask me,
but-
but I appreciate it. It's nice.
Yeah. I feel like it's the right thing to ask because we're a private website. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for putting on these forms. And
And
when
we'll
he
see you-
when he first asked me if I was about my recording, I'm like, oh, am I going to get yelled at for recording?
What? Oh no.
But I'm like,
no,
I mean,
not at all.
they didn't come here not to be recorded.
No, not at all.
It's
No
a
one should be yelling
public
at you
forum,
about it.
so-
Yeah, it's a public forum, and if someone yelled at you, we would have said no. You're.
Yeah, so I don't know her name, but the lady over there got in between me and one of the electeds or the candidates I was talking to earlier.
I don't know.
You don't need to play nanny or anything, but
Oh, okay.
I mean,